Welcome to the Meet Me podcast, a podcast all about our multifaceted human nature and constant journey through self discovery. With personal stories and insights around trauma, motherhood, relationships, spirituality, and individuality, I'm your host, Michelle Malik. Thanks for listening. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Meet Me podcast. As always, I'm your host, Michelle Malik, and through this podcast, I hope to inspire others to take their trauma and experiences and transmute those into power, purpose, and connection. Excited to share another guest conversation with you today that I had with Arash Majelessi. He is a soul coach who found this calling through his battle with leukemia for about 5 years, and his story is very inspiring. I hope that it impacts you in the same way that it impacted me, and that you're able to pull little nuggets of wisdom through his journey into his becoming that he has fallen into today. We talk about a lot of things in this episode, including the importance of balancing not only our physical health, but our mental, spiritual, and emotional well-being, as all of these parts equate to the whole of our human experience, as well as talking a lot about surrender and what we can do in our day-to-day lives to help make things flow a little bit easier, to take control and take our power back. So I really hope you enjoy. He did share a special promotion towards the end of the episode for all of the Meet Me listeners that may be interested in a discovery session with him. So be sure to listen through to the end for that. I did want to do one last shout out. As we are now halfway through April, I will be changing my healing offerings for private sessions starting in May. So this is the last couple weeks that I'll be providing the introductory level pricing. So if you are interested in booking at that level, please make sure to take advantage of it over the next 2 weeks. I'm excited to implement some changes again starting in May. So thank you so much as always for all of your support and your listening. Let's get into the episode. Well, welcome to the Meet Me podcast, Arash. Such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Michelle. Nice to be here.
Wanted to give you the opportunity to start by introducing yourself to the listeners, give a little bit of background about who you are and what you do.
Thank you. Well, my name is Arash Majelessi. God, I am an artist and in many different forms. My history and work has been in the restaurant business. I owned and operated a couple organic cafes up until about 6 years ago. And the last few years, I've been doing some spiritual coaching for people. And what led me to that has been a nice and deep, beautiful spiritual journey that sparked that in my life. And now I'm incorporating my art and incorporating my coaching and into helping people reach their full potential.
Beautiful. And yes, I think anybody who falls into the line of work with soul coaching or just any sort of spiritual support, there's usually a story behind it. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about what led you down that path and how you found this work.
I was involved in the restaurant business. I mean, I had a successful cafe, and it was an organic cafe with all the items I loved. And I was doing that for 20 years. Everything seemed to be going fine. I was in a good relationship. I had my own place. Like things were just kind of like going along. And I was about to open a second location where I got food poisoning out of the blue and it wouldn't go away. Like 4 or 5 days into it, I was still like really ill. So by force, I went to the doctor to find out what's going on. And that's when they discovered something wrong. This was about late 2017, found something extremely wrong with my blood, and they did some tests and they found leukemia. So that threw me for a loop. I went in complete shock for a while. About 2 months, I was like angry and I was confused. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm like the healthy guy. I'm fit. I eat clean. I even have an organic cafe helping others eat healthy. I work out, what's going on? And I considered myself a spiritual being too, like connected to God and grounded, and I would meditate. So I did everything right by the book or what I felt I knew. And this diagnosis threw me for a loop. And after coming to terms with it, I decided to go on a self-healing journey. I decided to go against what I was hearing because all I was hearing was you got to start chemo. All the doctors and family members were pressuring me to do Western medicine, start chemo immediately, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no way. I'm Mr. Natural. I'm going to go to the jungle and do ayahuasca. I'm going to get it out of my system. So I really made a complete sharp turn. I decided to go on a healing and spiritual journey. I sold my businesses. I sold and got rid of everything. I donated whatever I had and started really deep diving. Did self-discovery, researching what happened physically, trying to figure it out while I really get to know myself and figure out what happened or what's going on. And I started down this rabbit hole, and I really enjoyed this whole process of getting to know myself. And this took about 3 years. I traveled, I did everything under the book as far as holistic and natural treatments and remedies and everything. Then COVID came, and when COVID hit, it hit me really hard, Michelle. There was one night, well, it progressed quickly, and then there was one night I couldn't breathe and had to be rushed to the hospital. And I was in the hospital. They're trying to save my life because it hit me like it went straight to my lungs, and they called it COVID pneumonia. I was in there for 12 days, and it was in the peak of that COVID period. So like all my friends and family were really scared. In that period, they discovered that my cancer had also really progressed because Mr. Natural here didn't do any chemo. I felt really good. I really got to know myself. I was definitely like on a deeper state of being and a higher frequency, yet the physical had gotten worse. I had gone initially being diagnosed stage 1, and when I was in the hospital, the cancer had gone into stage 4. And on top of it, the pneumonia was really hard. So on in the middle of the time that I was there, day 6, the head of the hospital came in there and said something to me that I'll never forget. And that was the moment where I had to really take a look of me, myself, my life, and what do I want to do. He came to me and he looked at me. He's like, Arash, you look like the kind of guy who likes honesty, and you look like a straight shooter. So I'm going to just tell it to you straight. I'm like, okay. He's like, well, I've seen thousands of people not make it out of here alive, and you're in that same condition. So at the very, very best case scenario, you might make it out of here, but you'll have serious lung damage, and you'll be on an oxygen tank for the rest of your life. So if I were you, I would make some calls, get your affairs in order. I was like, okay. And then he walked away. That night, something happened. I felt like I had a decision to stay or leave. And I mean, I was hooked up, I was on ventilators, I was like being pumped with steroids and like things to keep me, from my lungs filling up. My lungs were like 95% damaged and like filled up with fluid. It was pretty bad. But I decided to stay, and I realized, and I thought about my parents. I thought about my mom and how much it would hurt her if I was to not come out of there. And I decided to stay. I'm like, there's no way. And I still have so much to do in this life. So I knew it wasn't in the restaurant business. I knew it was more passing on my love and passing on what I've learned and helping others and really being of service. And what was so clear to me. And a lot of other things happened that night. It was a miracle because the next day my blood had already gotten better. Normal white blood count range is like 4 to 10. Mine was at a point 0.2. And the following day, which was the turnaround, it had gone up to 1.2 and kept progressively getting better. And I was out of there 5 days later. I was out of there. So I was there a total of, I think, 6 days later. I was out of there and on my recovery. Yes, I was on oxygen for a couple of weeks, but then my body quickly recovered and I decided to do chemo. I'm like, okay, it's time. Let me take care of the body. I've done the spiritual work. This still needs to be addressed because I have a mission. I have a purpose. So let me take care of this. And that was the biggest surrendering of my life because I'm a rebel at heart. And it was so like humbling for me to just let go of my control and my way of doing things, and let the healing take place, like others, accept help from others, and things turn around. That started this whole journey of like, wow, what do I do with my life? And I started thinking, okay, of course painting, but there's something else, there's something deeper. And it came to about how deep I was learning to know myself and how much I had helped myself. Another reason that I decided to help or could get into coaching was the healing that I experienced for myself spiritually. Um, I healed a lot of pain. I healed a relationship with my parents. I healed old wounds and childhood stuff that had happened to me when I was a kid. I was bullied, and there was a lot of racism, and there was a lot of like things that happened in my childhood that built up and I carried throughout my whole life. And even though I was successful, even though I had, on the outside, a happy, got it together life, on the inside, it was not the same. It didn't match. I was hiding and suppressing all the pain from the inside. So all this was coming together for me in that period when I was healing. And it came to a point where I did the chemo, and I powered through that, and I healed so quickly. I did 6 months of chemo treatments. It was painful, but because of all the work I had done on myself, I was able to just breathe through it. I went into meditations during treatment. I just loved all the nurses. I made jokes during the whole treatment. I was like in a different state of mind. I was like, this is healing me. Every time I was getting like hooked up to the needles to get chemo, I'm like, this is medicine. This is going to heal me. And I'm healing because I have something to do. So my whole mind was in a positive way. And once I finished and then got the whole remission, like the cancer is gone. It's, it's been about a year and a half now that I've been in full remission. And in that period, I'm like, okay, the cancer is not coming back because I healed what was inside of me.
Mm.
And I just want to pass it on now. I just want to like pass what I've learned and help others who are hurting on the inside, like emotionally, because that's really a big deal.
Yeah. And I mean, such a beautiful story. So, so inspiring. And you talk to so many important parts because I find it that a lot of people who fall into the spiritual path, right? They often will focus on their emotional, their energy, all of those healing aspects, but the physical is just as much a part of our human experience. And so there is that balance of kind of yes, surrendering to the unknown of the spiritual aspects and the healing of all of those deep traumas, but then also surrendering to, okay, maybe I do need this Western medicine. Maybe I do need this additional support in my physical
Yeah.
healing. And it's just this balance of allowing the healing to take place in any way that it needs to take place and not rejecting the paths that are being basically laid out in front of you. And so, talking about that turning point for you, you had already established spiritual practices, you'd already established so much of your inner knowing. With that shift of basically being told, this is it, you need to get ready to depart, was
Hmm.
it just kind of that like overnight mindset of, I need to do more or I need to just let go? What was kind of like that thought process for you? Because I think that can be so tricky when you're faced with a decision. I think it's really easy for people to fall into, okay, I need to control more. I need to do more. I'm not doing enough, or start to blame, and the guilt and the shame starts to fester. Or was it just like, I'm just going to leave this up to whatever powers may be and know that I have a purpose here?
It's the latter. I seriously like surrendered. I surrendered all my control and let it be. I accepted everything, and accepting was the hardest thing. Surrendering was the hardest thing. Like letting go of control was one of the toughest things in my life. And it's still a work in progress, but it is definitely something that I keep myself in check with. But that turning point was a letting go and a surrendering and trusting in something bigger, having faith in something bigger, and believing like if I'm supposed to be here, if I have all this desire and inspiration and love and ambition that I want to still live, if this takes me out, so be it.
Mm-hmm.
But I surrender, because if I'm supposed to be here, let me make it through here. Let me make it through and come out of here thriving and bold and fully alive. And that's how I've been living my life every day since that one night. I'm present every day. I'm grateful every day. It was that surrender.
Yeah.
It was like letting go. Like I picture myself like it's a visual thing for me too, because like I picture a fist or a grip, and then I just release it. And that symbolizes me just letting go of control and allowing things to be. And that is in everything,
Mm.
circumstances, how things turn out, the weather, people's decisions, people's actions outside of myself.
Right.
Everything else outside, just kind of like, and the deep meditations, breath work has really helped with that because it helps ease my anxiety, helps ease my wanting to control, to fix that or change that in order for me to feel safe and okay. I've found a balance with breath work and meditation, and then also trusting and having faith to find that calmness inside me and allowing whatever it is outside to be. And it it's been profound. I mean, it's easily said. It's even like talking about it, it sounds woo-woo, but it's definitely real. It's definitely real for me. It's an experience that started that very night, like the full embracing of letting go and trusting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the hardest part. I struggle with it all the time. I know that's one of the biggest struggles for anybody who is connected in that way. Our ego, like you said, it's kind of there trying to protect us from harm, from our experiences of being disappointed or being rejected. We're trying to put this barrier around us so that we don't feel those things. But when you just let go, that's really where the healing and the magic can take place. And, with that turning point and that surrender, allowing whatever to be kind of recognizing too within yourself that I've learned so much. I have so much to offer others. I have so much to give still. But if this is it, then let it be. That's such an important aspect of it as well. Of still, even though you've established that you have so much to do, like knowing that whatever is meant to happen is going to happen. And if I make it out of here, then I know that I have this work that I need to do. You talk about the culmination of experiences that you went through in your life and how those festered in a physical way. Can you talk to a little bit about the deep healing that you had to do on that level and how
Mm,
you approach that with your clients? Because I am a firm believer that we go through the things that we go through as healers in order to use that knowledge to help others who are going through similar situations. So talk us through that a little bit.
absolutely. Thank you. I'm a firm believer in this concept because I have firsthand experience of it, but I also can refer back to my own experiences. Well, I'll talk about my own experience and then also how I use it with my clients and my programs and stuff. So growing up was tough for me. Like I had I had a lot of emotional turmoil that through different experiences of at home or in school, bullying, abuse, like anger, racism. There was a lot of that in my up until coming up from childhood up until like maybe 13, 14 years old. There's a lot of that. After that, I didn't experience anything like extreme, but all the patterns and all the self image and the self talks were already established. And that carried on throughout my whole life. And it expressed itself in how I lived my life, how I made decisions, how I talked to people, how I showed up at circumstances like with family, friends, in front of people, with girls. I mean, everything showed up as, and I showed up as this shy, nervous guy. And then I would act confident to try to feel or seem normal. And it was a struggle for years. Then, it's like, okay, work and what am I? I'm an artist. Let me paint. And then the business, all that stuff like started distracting me and keeping me busy and seeming like I had it all together. But inside, what I feel, it finally came up like I would get sick easily.
Mm.
I would catch a cold. I had bronchitis once or twice a year. So my immune system was weak all the time because of all the stress, all the emotional stress inside. I think I battled depression for decades because of like the outside pressures and being a people pleaser and making sure everyone's okay and me acting like everything's fine. But inside, I carried a silent sadness. And it went on for years. Of course, I'm a man of action. Of course, I tried all kinds of therapy, all kinds of hypnosis, all kinds of things. And this is all from my teenage years up in my 20s, 30s, everything. But this sickness, when it finally hit, when I finally got diagnosed, all of this made sense. The culmination and the build up of all the emotional pain that was still festering inside and not fully healed and let go of, built up somewhere. It showed up. It like, my immune system was low because of everything else, but that doesn't mean it turns into cancer. And I'm gonna say that this is my interpretation. This is my take on this, but I'm just gonna, say it. I'm gonna be really vulnerable with you. My self-loathing and like how I felt about myself inside, like secret, like I didn't like myself. Okay, there was a rejection happening that was a pattern. I just kept rejecting myself, hated myself for everything, the color of my skin and the way I walked and the way I did stuff and like how sensitive I was. And people, it was like this self-loathing that was so deep, so down deep to the bones. It felt like I hated myself down to the bones. And what resulted in my leukemia, I got diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia. They call it hairy cell leukemia. And that is a malfunctioning of the bone marrow inside the bones. So where inside the bone marrow is where your body makes blood. And that was where the cancer was. To me, making that connection was weird and profound. I even went back to one of my old favorite books from Louise L. Hay, and the book called You Can Heal Your Life. And in that book, she has this chart in the back where she connects feelings and emotions and thought patterns to physical ailments and physical sicknesses. And mine, leukemia, was a lack of joy, lack of happiness, lack of excitement. And yeah, that was profound to me. And that was my life. And how it manifested physically, how it's connected, how stress, and I mean, they say stress leads to sickness. Stress is the major cause of cancer. Yeah, they say that now. It's real. And mine is like, mine was a living example. I had a living example of that saying. And that's why I felt it's so important to not just heal the physical body because it was too late for me to like there was no prevention at that point. I had to like go in and do extreme Western remedies, which thank God we have that, and heal the stuff on the inside so it doesn't come back. Heal the emotions and all the pain and let go of all that stuff and fill it with self-love, fill it with self-acceptance,
Yeah.
self-love and acceptance,
And
and how
before,
those two together really help me heal. And
absolutely.
that's what I bring to my treatments. That's what I bring to my clients.
Yeah. And kind of before diving into the work that you're doing with your clients, I did want to touch on
Sure.
a few things that you said because
Hmm.
a lot of
Of
us
course.
experience things in childhood. Those are our developmental years that we carry with us throughout our entire lives. And it can be
Yep.
really difficult for people to bring awareness to how impactful some of the narratives that we take on as children that we don't even realize
Yes.
subconsciously. Some things are a little bit more obvious, like obviously bullying and racism. I experienced those things as well growing up. And yes, those aspects, when I look back, I can pinpoint them. But there's so many things underneath, like deep underneath the surface that tell us how to show up in the world, like you said, tell us how we're looked at by other people and how we need to adjust ourselves in order to be accepted. And I think with what you had just said of like, staying busy too, that's such a common thing. People will just bury themselves in work or bury themselves in outside things so that they don't have to face the truth of what's really happening on the inside. And they can either dull it with like I said, either like drowning themselves with work, going to just substances like alcohol and things like that just to cover and numb and not have to
Yep.
look at it full force. But it's really when we take that moment and look at ourselves seriously and say, how do I feel about myself? And where did these things come from? Are they really mine or were they kind of brought into us? And it takes so much time and dedication. I'm still working through so many things currently. I'm like 4 years into my spiritual healing journey. And so lots of progress, but it's a constant work in progress. We're constantly uncovering new layers and new aspects to this healing. And so I just wanted to kind of reiterate like how important that is, and being able to uncover those things later in life is huge, because so many people, they reach a certain age and they're like, well, I've been this way my whole life. I don't need a change.
Right.
It's worked for me this far, but you didn't really have that option because you kind of were faced with all of this. But I just want to say for anybody listening, like, look at yourself seriously, and understand like what your feelings are and where they came from, because that's really what's going to propel you into the next stage.
Totally. And yes, some of us have experienced like extreme things in our childhoods, and sometimes it's not extreme, but it still affects you. And you're right. Some of it maybe is easily remembered, or some of it is so extreme people put it away. They don't even want to like think about it, and they'll forget about it so they don't have to deal with it. But it's still there again. It's still there, influencing behind the shadows. It's pulling the strings of how you move and how you talk and what you do in your life. And yeah, if it's escaping through work, accomplishments, material things, gains, shoppings, cars, purses, or relationships, diving in totally into relationships, or numbing yourself through stuff, the substances, alcohol, whatever it is. And Michelle, I've done it all. I ran away from my own self for a long time. I suppressed, numbed, kicked away, and kept myself busy and athletic and strong and physically. Like it didn't go away. Trust me, it did not go away. All it did is keep showing up and keep getting stronger. And I'm lucky. And I'll tell you this, it's this point where I call my cancer a gift, because it actually gave me the gift. Like it sat me down, stop moving, stop distracting yourself. It sat me down to really take a look at all this stuff, and gave me the opportunity to heal it.
Absolutely. And that goes into something that I took note of when we first connected, of that mentality shift that's so important, because in anybody in your position, they're given the choice, and anybody in any difficult position, you're given a choice. Do I fall victim to my circumstance and allow it to take control and take over me? Or do I grab my power back and find a way in making this worthwhile, or making this a lesson that I can walk away from and be stronger and more in tune with myself? So tell me a little bit about that. And you have a
Oh,
beautiful way of presenting that. So I want to go into it.
oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. It's so you're touching on it, because there was that very distinct moment where I had a choice. I could have easily given up. I saw the option of giving up and just letting this take over. I saw that option really like within reach. I'm like, okay, that's there. I could just let go, give in to the outside, give in to the sickness and let it take over and give up. And at the same time, I knowing my spirit, knowing all the things I want to do still, and all the people who love me. Like I was getting gifts and stuff when I was in the hospital in complete isolation. I was getting reminders of how much people loved me and how much I mattered to them. And I'm so grateful for that, because it was my birthday. I went in the hospital February 9th, and I got out February 20th or 21st. My birthday is February 16th. So I was in there on my birthday. So I was getting phone calls, gifts, cake, and it was like delivered in hazmat suits, and I was in isolation. It was like total peak of COVID. So like I'd be by myself on FaceTime with my mom. Happy birthday. Thank you. And blow him a kiss and blow out the candle. So I didn't have a chance to give into that. Like I was getting so much support, and I was so connected to my spirit that there was no other choice for me than to choose to stay, choose to move forward. And I saw how I could just give up, and I chose to stay, like to gain control back and do something with it, like make it turn around, heal my body. I was telling my body to heal. I was giving it love. I was doing breath work, and like I was doing chakra aligning. I was doing energy work when I was in the hospital. One time a nurse wanted to come in, and I was in the middle of some breath work, and it peaked to there, because she wanted to come in, and she's like, "Oh, so sorry." I'm like, "No, no, no, it's okay." And I just finished up, but I was so proactive about with my healing that there was no way of letting go. Not yet. I felt like it's not my time yet. Now I'm going to have this opportunity to live, and I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to give my all, live every day because I don't know when my last day will be. So I'm going to live every day as if it's my last day, as if it's my first day, as if like it's the only day I have. So I'm going to tell who I love that I love them. I'm going to do what's in my heart. I'm going to say what I'm inspired to say. I'm going to share like what love I have to whoever it is. I'm going to share and I'm going to be present. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. There's no procrastinating. There's no, so now it's like, now I don't have enough hours in the day because now I
Right.
want to I've got so many projects going on and I'm inspired and excited about everything. I mean, coming down to even eating my food that I make. I love cooking. So that's another thing. And I really sit and I chew, I breathe, I enjoy the flavors. Like this has heightened my senses and being present and being aware of everything that I eat it up. I eat it up. I eat every moment up. And my parents are older now. And I'm so grateful that they were there for me to help me heal. And now I'm loving on them. I'm loving on my friends because again, time is so precious. So every moment that I have to show them that I care, show them that I love them, how much they mean to me, I do it.
Such a
Yeah.
gift within it of itself, because I'm sure, being in your situation where you almost saw those opportunities ripped completely from you to have those still, it's just
Yeah.
enhanced everything, I'm sure. And now, kind of going into the work that you're doing and also just your mentality around things. I remember you said specifically when we first chatted, you said, going from victimhood into Victorville. And so I want to talk about kind of your approach on allowing and supporting people in that transition, because it's hard. When life is beating us down left and right, and we're in a really difficult time in the world. And I think we always have been. There's always going to be challenges, but trying to find that strength and support in not falling into the victim mentality. Like, what is your approach to assisting people through that?
Thank you. That's a big simplifying element for me. And it's okay to fall into victimhood as long as you notice that you are.
Hmm.
So noticing and being aware is huge. So to me, victimhood versus victimville is where, as playing a victim, you're playing the blame game. You're pointing the finger at something else or someone else, blaming the clouds for the rain and the rain because of that you're not going out, or blaming how this person cut you off and now you're so upset, or not getting that promotion or whatever it is, blaming that person because now your food is late or anything. It could be simple things or extreme things, but playing the victim is like where you feel like you're helpless. You feel like you don't have a choice in the matter. And it's just you've been dealt these cards and you got to just deal with it, accept it. And that's what it is. That's it. That's your life. You got to just deal with it because those are the cards you were dealt with. And that's that, like done deal. That's not the end of the story because I feel, and this is again tied into my own experience, that we have a choice. We always have a choice. And the choice comes in the moment where you could catch yourself when you're being a victim, or a choice when a circumstance happens. You have a choice of how you deal with it, how you handle it, how you react, how you think about it. How do you interpret it? Do you interpret it as like, oh, well, it's doomsday. That means it's the end for me. Or do you see it as an opportunity to improve? Do you see it as an opportunity for you to change something in yourself or change your approach and fix it or love it or embrace it or forgive it or whatever it is? It's like you have a choice and there is an and. It's like that this circumstance happened. You could be victim or you take control and you accept what it is and you accept that you have responsibility and you have a power within you to make a decision or a choice. And that is what it's all about. And I coach people to not play a victim, even if they're complaining about their weight, if they're complaining about the relationship, because we always have complaints. Everyone has complaints, something that they're not happy with or a problem that arises. But those who play victim will have the same complaints and same stories over and over that they'll complain about years later. They'll have the same story and blame someone else for the same thing 20 years, 30 years later. Being a victor in your life doesn't mean you crossed the finish line of the marathon and you got a gold medallion. It doesn't mean that. And it could be that too, but it doesn't mean a huge thing. It means that you take responsibility and you make small changes. You see where area can you improve? What can you do to make it better for yourself or make it better for that person, or have a mutual happy ground, a compromise, or if it's in a relationship, a compromise. If it's a circumstance with work, what can you do to improve your position or learn more about this new topic to be able to be more helpful, or whatever it is? You have a choice. That's the thing. And I can help, or people when they see that there is a choice, or maybe they don't even know that what choice they have, just the understanding or the accepting of like, there is something open. What can I do about this? And then things start opening up. Things start showing up that you can do something about.
That choice is huge and something I always think
Yeah.
about too. I had this saying of like, even the most broken of us, even the people who have experienced so much torment in their lives, there is still a choice to heal what's happened, because we're not responsible for the things that happen to us necessarily, unless we outwardly go out looking for trouble. But a lot of the times we are just receiving of an experience, and then we have to decide how to move forward with that if we want to, again, allow it to fall into victimhood or just fester in the complaints and not do any changes. Or we can look at it as an opportunity to either learn a lesson, to react differently, to, view from a higher perspective. There's always that option for us. And so that's been the biggest thing in my healing journey as well, of like, not to say that you're not allowed to feel frustrated or that you can't complain about things,
Yeah.
but like you said,
I
it's
wanted
like,
to add this.
yeah,
It's not easy. I
no.
want to make sure that I express this too. It's not an easy option. It
Mm-mm.
is definitely challenging. It is super hard to like break out of a habit or break out of like being a victim or like whatever, just blaming other stuff and stepping into your own power. It's not easy.
No, no, it's
Little
actually,
baby steps at a time.
yeah, it's actually a lot harder to go that
It's
route
so much harder.
versus just
Yeah.
allowing it to take over and throwing your hands up. And, we talk about surrender a lot throughout our conversation. And I think of like the opposite version of surrender, of literally throwing your hands up and giving up and surrendering to this story that we've created, that we're just meant to have a bad life. We're just meant to have bad things happen to us. And that's just what it is. And that is
Mhm.
easy to fall into. It's a lot harder to surrender in the way that we're talking about, of like release the control, release that everything. Looking at an entry point for people, I love to make things a little bit accessible to some who maybe are not as far along on their healing journey. What is something that you typically go to, or that you advise people to either implement on a daily basis, or just like a starting point as they continue through facing these things and trying to find that peace and understanding in themselves?
Wow. That's beautiful. Yeah, an easy entry point to me that I've simplified down to one thing I think would be is tangible, and it's very simple, but it's beautiful and profoundly deep. It's the serenity prayer that I've incorporated into my life and I use every day. And it is such a simple tool and awareness. It's an easy thing to apply. Just coming off the topic of like being victim or victor, it kind of plays into that. And the serenity prayer, to me, I'll say it. I mean, it's God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Knowing what things you have control over and knowing what things you got to just accept and surrender to is a huge thing. It's so huge, and it can make your day flow smoothly, or it can make your day a rocky, stressful son of a gun day. To simplify it, Michelle, we only have control over ourselves. We only have control over what we say and what we do, and that's it. We don't have control over anything else, nothing else. I mean, our thoughts and feelings are kind of there. We feel stuff, we get triggered, or we receive a thought and all that stuff. That's fine. We got to be aware of that. and it gets awareness. But what do we have control over ultimately is what we do about it. Or what do we say? How do we express it? How do we express that thought or feeling? What do we do with that thought or feeling, or that desire, or that ambition, or that dream? What do we do about it? That's what we have control over, and that's it. And having the courage to do it, because it's not easy. You want to climb a mountain, okay? That's in your power. You can climb it, but it's not easy. And it's going to actually get even at the beginning of the mountain, like the base of the mountain, it's like, kind of like gradually getting steeper. But as you climb and get closer to the summit, it's the steepest and the hardest and the slipperiest and the loose gravel or tight corners. So it gets harder, but it's still a choice. Everything is in your power, and you have that. Unknowing that it is not going to be easy, but you can do it is a great thing. That's in our power. The courage to do the things that we can. And that's the only thing in our power, our words and our actions. And letting go of everything else, like the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, which is the weather, other people, someone cutting us off, someone's reaction, the way they said something, um, the result of a football game score, how the food showed up, and like the chef maybe forgot to delete the onions and you wanted no onions, but there's onions on there. I mean, these are out of our control. You just got to accept it. I don't say like just take it as it is, but we don't try to control things. These are things that are outside our control. And then what do we do about it? We kindly ask for no onions, please. I said no onions. Or kindly, oh, if it's raining outside, oh, maybe I need a jacket and an umbrella. Instead of complaining and moaning and groaning about the rain, let's make the best of it and get an umbrella and some rain boots on and just go on our day, and maybe even make a fun day out of it. The last part of that prayer, and is like the wisdom to know the difference. Mm-hmm. And that is the main thing, to know, to really like draw a line between what things we don't have any control over and what things we have control over. And knowing what you can do or say about it, and how you can respond to a circumstance, is where our focus needs to be, so we can discern. Starting at that point opens the door for serenity, for surrendering, letting go of control, and then also embracing the responsibility of the things that we do in our life, and how we affect things in our life. And that is such a beautiful entry point. It's simple, but we can start off simple with daily things that happen in our life, to profound things that are big and affect other people. And that takes time, and that wisdom takes time. And you got to be open. You got to open your ears. You got to open your eyes. You got to like know how is what I do. And here's the second part of this wisdom part. Like what I do, is that going to be a positive outcome for myself and other people around? Or what I do is going to be a hurtful, painful, negative outcome for myself or others involved? Mm-hmm. Because we have a ripple effect. We're going to affect other people for sure. First ourselves and then others. So also thinking through our actions and thoughts. What is this going to be, a positive outcome or a negative outcome? Am I going to hurt this person? Am I going to bless this person? Taking all that in and simplifying it, to me, that is like where I really start.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it hits a lot of really important parts that, like you said, are much bigger and broader, but starting there, just having that intention, saying those words and meaning them, it'll kind of just allow that trajectory to happen. I can see that being like such an amazing entry point for people who are kind of just starting down this path. And, talking about the discernment piece, that's so important in anything that we do, because yes, there are some battles that maybe we have to fight. Yes, we're not saying, don't stand up for yourself and completely give away your power to somebody who's actively going against you or anything like that. But having the discernment of like, is this worth that kind of response? Is this response, like you said, going to have a positive impact on myself? Or is it going to teach this person a lesson? Or is it just going to be mean-hearted and mean-spirited and not do any good for either of us? Because nobody walks away from those situations feeling good when there's no benefit to either side. So those three points that we talk about are so important.
Thank you. Yeah, and you touched on something, and I definitely want to make a distinction. Like that thought of like, is this going to hurt the other person, or is this going to? We're also going to be aware of not being a people pleaser or not
Mm.
doing things just in case so they don't get hurt. But we're being hurt. I'm not saying be a doormat. I'm not saying, take abuse and like still shine bright and have that person walk away happy. I'm not saying that either. It is that's a whole other element of like self-care and self-love and having boundaries with people and how do you interact with people. That those are definitely other areas to shine light on. But again, the serenity prayer is a concept to me that opens the door for noticing that we have limited amount of control on things and it's only us, and everything else around us is outside of our control. And what we do with ourselves determines how things turn out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And honestly, this has been such an amazing conversation, so inspiring, like I said, and I hope it reaches people who
Oh,
are, at their lowest of lows and kind of trying to find that power within to keep going and find the light and find that purpose through it all. So thank you so much for your time, Arash. I wanted to
oh, you're welcome.
save some space towards the end to guide people to where to find you and how they can work with you if they're interested.
Thank you. Where they can find me. My website is my initials, amsoulcoaching.com. And I'm on all the social media platforms at AM Soul Coaching. And I want to also offer your listeners a gift, if that's okay with
Of
you.
course.
Want to give them a gift for being with your program and just offer a 30-minute free session. If anybody DMs me on Instagram, Michelle, if they DM me Michelle, they'll get a free, no obligations, just a free 30-minute consultation. And I guarantee that they'll walk away with either a solution to their problem or a strategy to benefit their life right away.
Oh, beautiful. So honored that you thought to offer that to the listeners. So I'll definitely include all of that in the description as well so that people don't miss out on using that 30-minute free session. It can be very transformative and a great
Just
start.
want to share the love. It's
Yeah,
too many people are hurting out there, and
absolutely.
we just need to go to the root and just like unplug it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you
Yeah,
so, so much again for
my
your
pleasure.
time. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode or any previous episodes, please don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast. I'm so excited for some of the upcoming content and can't wait to share with you so soon. Until then, bye for now.